I actually argue that if you're going to leave an inheritance for your children's children, I'm the one who's supposed to pay as a grandpa for my grandson's lobola. I, as a grandpa, I'm the one who's supposed to pay school fees for my grandson. Like it or not, the kind of woman we go for sometimes is because of our level of finances. What I see as a scenario is someone who wants to start an orphanage, and yet they themselves need to be treated like an orphan because they are that vulnerable. Borrowing has been normalized. And my fear actually has been, it has been normalized to the extent that it is actually institutionalized almost totally.
Isn't it the rude reality that you can't survive without borrowing?
No.
Welcome to the Waluversity Podcast with Dr. Walubita Siyanga.
You read a book, folks, and then you see your life in there, and the book throws a web of guilt because you find yourself in a space where you're thinking, gosh, have I ever lived my life? Or have I just been living my life to pay bills and things of that sort? That's what this book entitled, You Do Not Exist Just to Pay Bills does to you. Authored by the one and only Dr. Walubita Siyanga. It's good to have you. Look, who spoke to you, man? This book is just so accurate in terms of just bringing out the reality out there.
Yes. I think I came up with the thought or the idea of writing the book because I looked at, first of all, my life.
Yeah.
I realized that the sum total of a purpose why God created me cannot just be for me to pay rent and for me to just ensure that I have school fees for my children and end there and think I'm living life and draw fulfillment from that. Yes. I come to realize that fulfillment, dreams coming to pass, you having a life that is above and beyond you to even living a generational legacy is attached not to the money that you're paying bills. It's attached to the money that remains after you have paid the bills. And so that's a conversation I had with myself, and it's a conversation I love to have with people to say, look, fine, yes, you're able to do certain things for yourself, but above and beyond that, there's more to life beyond just paying bills.
And look, the average Zambian right now may argue that, look, what I earn allows me just to pay bills. Is it a case of what you have in terms of money, or it's what you have mentally? Regards to where do you want to be in the next 10 years? What kind of a legacy do you want to leave?
So I always feel that poverty is a mindset.
All right.
And wealth is also a mindset. And eventually the kind of wealth that you're going to have is informed by your thinking or your mindset towards wealth, or the kind of poverty you're going to end up in is determined also by the quality of your thinking. I tend to see that people weigh in more on looking at how much expenses they're able to handle and having money for expenses, especially the bills related. Yeah. But we don't put weight more on earning. People are excited about spending.
All right.
They're not very excited about earning money. So for me, it calls for us to come to a level where you're thinking, okay, I need to put more weight on my income generation rather than expensing whatever monies that I have. Because when you're looking at, I just need enough money for rent, the way life works and the way the universe works, you will find money for rent. And beyond that, there will be nothing. Yeah. Somebody who has the desire to buy one vehicle and somebody who has a desire to buy 10 vehicles, the kind of effort, the kind of mindset that they will have, the kind of input they will put into that is very, very different. The person who wants to buy just one car, they'll work according to that.
Yeah.
But a person who wants to buy 10, their level of hard work, their level of intentionality, their level of focus will be because they want to get 10 vehicles. So I think that's the thinking.
You've got 14 chapters in this 70-page tenor, I want to call it, and there's several themes that go with each chapter. Before I look at those chapters that caught my attention, which one for you was the most, I'm not sure if I want to say quite exciting, but which one do you think was most profound,
I think it's the one, I'm not sure which chapter exactly it is, but it's the one that talks about how your purpose is not attached to the bills that you pay.
That's chapter 7.
Yes.
Fueling your purpose beyond bill paying finances.
Thank you.
Yeah?
Your purpose is attached to the money after the bills. And jokingly earlier, I was saying, life does not begin after 40. Life begins after bills are paid.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
That's a powerful line, bro.
And so purpose is not linked to you have paid rent. No. When you have done all of those necessities, you have shelter, you have food, you have water, are you able to do those? Then the money that remains is now the money that you can now use to fuel the purpose. And purpose is God-given. Right. So you can't tell me God created you just to ensure that you're paying rent. No. There's a purpose that we all have. For some, it's to want to touch the world. For some, they would want to do a home for the aged. Someone would want to do an orphanage. All sorts of things that we want to do. But what I see as a scenario is someone who want to start an orphanage, and yet they themselves need to be treated like an orphan because they are that vulnerable. Yeah. Somebody would want to do certain initiatives, but they do not have the means because all they have is money that is set for them to be able to take care of themselves. So for me, purpose is a very huge thing. And I attach my fulfillment to my purpose. If I'm accomplishing purpose, I know that God is pleased with me because that is why He put me on the earth, to fulfill purpose, not to pay rent, to fulfill purpose.
That's scary though, because then now it exposes you to, I know this sounds very, very, very funny, but look, then you reduce your purpose to only paying bills and rent.
Yes.
And that's a danger, isn't it?
It's a danger, and that is what I'm not comfortable with, because if you look at it that way, there's a lot of people that are not fulfilling their purpose. There's a lot of people that are caught in the, is it the 9 to 5 or is it the 8 to 5 rat race?
Yeah.
Because the kind of monies that they are making is only sufficient to be able to sustain their living. Literally, some people work to earn a living.
Yeah.
Literally, they are not thriving, they're not flourishing. They have to earn a living. And I think earning a living is sad.
Yeah.
You can't live your life just to do that. So if you use those metrics to measure whether people are fulfilling purpose in their lives or not, you discover that a large percentage of people are actually not fulfilling their purpose. And because of that, a lot of people are miserable, a lot of people are depressed, a lot of people go through life feeling very empty and unfulfilled. Why? Because they're not fulfilling purpose. Why? Because they don't have enough money to do purpose.
Listen, chapter 6 is very profound for me, very interesting indeed. It says the debt snare, unpacking the paycheck to paycheck cycle. Now, you can hardly find people who don't, owe anyone money. And then there's an argument that goes to support that look, you cannot develop unless you borrow.
So, unfortunately, now we are in a culture, especially in the land of work and joy.
Yeah,
we're in a culture where borrowing has been normalized.
All right.
And my fear actually has been, it has been normalized to the extent that it is actually institutionalized almost totally. They have made the idea of borrowing to live or to survive very normal. And look,
isn't it the rude reality that you can't survive without borrowing?
No. I think if you need more money, you need to earn more rather than borrow. I have a scripture of, Christian persuasion. Yeah. The Bible says the borrower is slave to the lender. Anybody who borrows is enslaved to the people that are lending to them. And it's such an unforgiving cycle because when you get used to a lifestyle of debt and you get used to a lifestyle of borrowing, all you live for is to get to borrow and then use and then borrow some more. And often we see situations where people have borrowed from here, from there. But the original intention of borrowing is for business scale up,
Okay.
not for personal consumption. Anybody who borrows money for consumption is actually becomes more poorer than somebody who has little money but they are broke.
So what about borrowing for pressure? Because I would say the personal experience. I have borrowed money to pay another debt. I've done that before. Not a very good thing, of course, folks, but
Not sustainable.
Absolutely.
Because when your focus is on borrowing to pay another debt or borrowing to manage your life,
Yeah. Just school fees, for instance.
True.
Especially in January.
True. So, but what that means is that there's no growth. There's no growth. I call debt negative income.
Right.
I call it retrogressive advancement. You think you have taken 5 steps forward, and yet in reality, you have taken yourself 5 steps back. Wow. There's no growth. So you remain in this quandrum, where you're just in a cycle of, so you're not making progress, you're just cyclical. Activity, yes. So there's no growth whatsoever. So at the end of the day, you can't leave an inheritance for your children. At the end of the day, there's nothing that you can point at to say, I have that asset, because there's nothing you have done. You've just been managing. And that is a snare for some people that are in regular employment, because especially if they have that financial security, they know that let me borrow, I will give back when I'm paid. And so when others are excited about getting paid, this one person is like, you know what, there's nothing to be excited about, because you know what, I need to pay that debt that I already borrowed money. Yeah. So it's a very, very unforgiving cycle, and anybody who depends on debt for personal consumption will never become wealthy.
So it's about using debt for growth.
Yes, that is why I said it's for business scale up. Yeah. If you can use debt to scale up business, use debt to multiply something, to buy assets that will give you more money, that is very, very allowed. Yeah. But borrowing for pressure, for rent, for food, not sustainable at all. That's the best way of entering into a cycle of retrogressive advancement.
In the past, I think our forefathers believed in the issue of inheritance and principal sort and leaving a lasting legacy for the kids. But it's not seemingly the case now, because like you're saying, we're careless with our debts. When there's a funeral after you've passed, your family is not mourning because you've gone, but also because you've left them problems.
Bible says a righteous man leaves an inheritance for his children's children.
Yeah.
Now, what people don't realize with that scripture, it doesn't mean when you die, you leave an inheritance for your children's children. No. An inheritance is something that you leave, you pass on while you're still alive. By the time you are dying, you have emptied yourself into your children's children.
Let them feel they have a stake in the property. If maybe you have houses that you're renting out, let your daughter go be the one, put her in charge of collecting rentals for a particular house, put her in charge of the maintenance of that house, so that when daddy has gone on out of this world, or grandpa has gone, there's a sense of continuity with the resources that have been left. There's a sense of continuity. I actually argue that if you're going to leave an inheritance for your children's children, I'm the one who's supposed to pay as a grandpa for my grandson's lobola. I, as a grandpa, am the one who's supposed to pay school fees for my grandson, not my son, my grandson. All of the children that my son will have are my responsibility as a grandpa, to ensure that there's that transgenerational wealth passed on beyond my son to his children.
Yeah. But how then do you bring all your family members at that latitude to appreciate that? Because you can pass on, and we're talking in the background about how you need to be wise when you're marrying a wife. Because you can be the vision carrier as an individual, as a man, and you've set the standards. You've got the roadmap for the future and how your family is going to navigate through life. But how do you ensure that you bring everyone to that foresight?
Mm-hmm. So I think I can emphasize that point again. One major reason for people being poor, whether it's man or woman, is the partner that they married. If you marry a wrong partner, you may end up poor the rest of your life. And I know the Bible says he who finds a wife finds favor, obtains favor. Yes, that is very true. But if you find the wrong wife,
Yeah.
it's tough.
It's as good as bad guessing, right?
Yes. True. And so, wealth building for legacy must involve actively the wife and the children. Financial education, wealth creation education must begin at a young age. For the couple, it's conversations that you must begin to have while you're still girlfriend and boyfriend. And I believe we must be able to draw red flags before you marry someone. Realize to say, this one, if I marry her, I'm marrying some, gold digger. And they have no capacity. Or, those women sometimes that just believe because they are pretty, they deserve privileges and they can never do anything to make money for themselves.
Yeah.
And let's not focus on the woman. We can also focus on them, because if you're a very industrious woman, but you have a husband that just wants to sit at home, doesn't want to work, and believes in the woman bringing in the money. There are men that are like that.
Yeah.
You are doomed again. So in carrying the family together, it's let's move from individual wealth to family wealth, to couple goals. Yes, you are a high value man. Maybe your woman is a high value woman, but are you a high value couple together? Are you able to work together? Are you able to do business together? Are you able to measure financial goals together? A lot of people get married in every sense, but financially they're not married, and already that's you're dooming yourself to a life of poverty.
Yeah. There's another interesting topic that's in chapter 11, understanding the cost of responsible mistakes.
Oh yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. So again, mistakes are costly when you are a husband, a wife. Put it in a simple way, if you are married, don't just think about yourself when it comes to issues of resources and things like that. What if as a husband you lose a leg? So risky behavior as a married man who has a family and who is interested in family wealth is a no-no. There are certain things that we must be able to do away with and shed off as we grow in responsibility. Because I imagine right now, if I were to lose my life because I've done something silly or something irresponsible, what will be of my wife? How do they pick up? Because there's plans that we have together, and those plans actively involve me as a provider, not just of resources, but of vision. All right, so it may kick my whole family in disarray. So I think as you grow on with responsibilities of family, there should be a way where you decide, look, I'm not going to do certain things anymore because, look, I have a family, I have a wife to go back to, I have people that depend on me, and I'm the main breadwinner for my family. So if I do not manage myself in a certain way, I might lose myself. So, but there are a lot of people that are irresponsible. They get involved with illicit things. If it's in the area of, relationships, they end up contracting all sorts of diseases, HIV and things like that, cutting your life short. Your family needs you healthy. There are people that will drink and drive, do drugs and drive. We've heard people end up in terrible accidents, road traffic accidents. Why? Because they were very careless about how they carried on. And so if you're somebody who's interested in family legacy of wealth, you need to be able to just begin to self-control and having that self-regulation, knowing that there are a lot of people that depend on you.
Listen, there's so many interesting chapters here. 14 chapters, and this is a page turner. This I can tell you. But let's talk about, and I'll leave this for our folks out there to just find out on their own. But on a general scale, talking about this particular book, the biggest question is, why shouldn't you, just exist to pay bills?
Number one, you will never buy your dream car. Yeah.
Or you never marry your dream woman.
Yeah, true. Especially for us men. Because you've raised a very critical point. Because look, for us men, like it or not, the kind of woman we go for sometimes is because of our level of finances.
All right.
If you were very rich, you'd probably settle
for Beyonce.
Yeah. Why not? Because you have the means and the capacity to handle. But some of us wear ourselves to say, for me, it's bookie. My level is this, So let's take it in another way so that people don't misunderstand.
Yeah.
If you are Zanaco,
Yeah.
as a football team,
Yeah.
you stay within your league.
All right.
But if you have Chelsea money,
Yeah.
you can say, Man, you come along.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are those, but yeah, you will not be able to buy a dream car. You will not be able to travel to your dream destinations. In fact, a lot of people bury their dreams because they are broke. Because all they're able to do is just pay bills. So we bury those aspirations. And above all, for me, we all have dreams. We all have a purpose we want to fulfill.
Yeah.
Trust me, if all you have is money for bills, you cannot start that orphanage. You can't. Yeah.
You can't look after the son to your late brother, can you?
How can you love your neighbor if you're not loving yourself? You only love your neighbor to the extent that you love yourself. You're only able to treat others well to the extent that you're able to treat yourself. So if you can't take care of yourself very well, then you're just going to mistreat that your older brother's child.
Listen, I know this sounds very silly, but how do you know that you're guilty of what this book is talking about?
I think your life will tell you. Literally.
What are the red flags?
If you're not having enough beyond your rent or money, if you're not having enough beyond, let's go to the mathematics of world creation. I don't know whether you remember this mathematics of greater than, less than. Yeah. So if it's greater than, we do this, right?
Yes.
So for most people, it's greater than ukuku expense.
Yeah.
Greater than income, less.
Yes.
Yeah? For others, income equals expenses. Money in, money out. The healthy picture is income must be greater than expenses. You must be able to live in such a way that when you have done paying all your bills, you've just spent 20% of your income. For a lot of people, it's the other way around.
That is depressing.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that life.
And that is why a lot of people have non-communicable diseases. People are dying of stroke every day these days because of living to pay bills.
Wow. Listen, congratulations on this book. One of the over 100 books you've written.
Yes.
God. Wow. Listen, all the best. And right now, all I can say to you is that find this book. And I know how you're feeling right now. You're feeling bad about yourself because, you've just been living to pay bills. But that can be a story that will be in history. If you get this book, read it, and your life will change. This I can guarantee you. Thanks for watching.